For centuries, Russia was ruled by Tsars with absolute power. The Romanov dynasty reigned for over 300 years. The Tsar was seen as chosen by God. The Tsar's authority was absolute. This system, called autocracy, meant one person ruled with complete control. For ordinary Russians, the Tsar was a distant, powerful figure. Life under the Tsars was very different for various people. The nobility lived in comfort, often serving the Tsar. In contrast, the vast majority were peasants working the land. Their existence was one of hard labor and poverty. The Tsarist government controlled many aspects of life. Those who spoke out could be sent to Siberia. Books and newspapers were censored. Despite these efforts, ideas about change grew. The seeds of revolution were being planted. The Tsar's absolute power created a society ripe for upheaval. The Romanov dynasty's long rule shaped Russia, but also sowed its downfall. The belief in the Tsar's divine right began to wane. The stage was set for a dramatic transformation. The Tsarist era was ending, and a new chapter was beginning. The story of Russia under the Tsars is one of power, control, and the rise of revolutionary ideas. Social problems in Russia grew worse over time. Most people were poor peasants, working on land often not their own. They lived in small villages and faced many hardships, with bad harvests leading to starvation. The gap between the rich nobles and poor peasants was enormous. In the cities, a new working class was emerging, facing terrible conditions in factories. They worked long hours for low pay, with crowded and unhealthy homes. Economic issues also plagued the Russian Empire, which was slow to modernize. Farming methods were old and inefficient, and the government spent heavily on the military and the Tsar's court. The Russo-Japanese War in 1904 to 1905 was a disaster, showing Russia's weakness. These social and economic problems created a revolutionary mood. People were tired of poverty and injustice, and a government that did not seem to care. Educated Russians began to read books about new ideas, including those from Karl Marx. Secret groups formed to discuss these ideas and plot ways to change Russia. The stage was being set for a great upheaval. The dream of owning land was a powerful source of unhappiness for peasants. Factory workers felt ignored and exploited, with their anger growing each year. The government's spending priorities left little for schools or hospitals. The revolutionary mood was fueled by a desire for better lives and a fairer society. The social and economic strains were pushing Russia towards a breaking point. The ideas of change and revolution were spreading, despite government efforts to control them. The society was strained to its limits, and the call for change was becoming louder. Bloody Sunday in January 1905 showed growing unrest in St. Petersburg. Peaceful workers led by Father Gapon marched to the Tsar's winter palace. They believed the Tsar would help them. Soldiers were ordered to stop the marchers. Soldiers fired into the unarmed crowd, killing hundreds. This event shocked the country, shaking faith in the Tsar. Bloody Sunday sparked the 1905 revolution. Strikes and uprisings spread. Soldiers and sailors mutinied. The Tsar's government was losing control. The October Manifesto promised civil liberties and an elected parliament. But the Tsar often ignored or dissolved the Duma. The underlying problems remained unsolved. The 1905 revolution showed the Tsar's vulnerability. The promises were not enough to address deep-rooted issues. The Tsar's reluctance to share power fueled discontent. Bloody Sunday and the 1905 revolution were early warnings. The Tsarist regime was seen as oppressive. The seeds of revolution were taking root. The stage was set for a transformative revolution. Russia's entry into World War I in 1914 made things much worse. The war was initially popular, but soon, Russia suffered terrible defeats. Millions of soldiers were killed or wounded, and the army was poorly equipped. Food and supplies were scarce both at the front and at home. Workers went on strike demanding food and an end to the war. The February Revolution began with strikes and food riots. With chaos in Petrograd and no support from the army, Tsar Nicholas II abdicated the throne on March 15, 1917. The February Revolution marked the end of Tsarist rule and the beginning of a new era in Russian history. The provisional government struggled to rule Russia effectively. It decided to continue fighting in World War I, a very unpopular decision. Soldiers and ordinary people wanted peace above all. The government also delayed land reforms, angering the peasants. Conditions in the cities did not improve much, with food still scarce and prices high. During this time, Vladimir Lenin returned to Russia. Lenin was the leader of the Bolsheviks, a radical communist group. He had a clear message: peace, land, and bread. Lenin called for all power to the Soviets, councils of workers and soldiers. The Bolsheviks' popularity grew rapidly, especially among workers and soldiers. They were well organized and disciplined, seeing the provisional government as weak and ineffective. In October 1917, the Bolsheviks decided to act. Led by Lenin and Leon Trotsky, their armed supporters, the Red Guards, seized key buildings in Petrograd. They stormed the Winter Palace where the provisional government was meeting. The takeover was relatively quick and faced little resistance. The Bolsheviks declared that they were now in power. This event is known as the October Revolution. The Bolsheviks promised to end the war, give land to the peasants, and provide food to the hungry workers. These promises were very attractive to many Russians, leading to widespread support for the Bolsheviks. The October Revolution marked the beginning of a new era in Russian history, with the Bolsheviks in control. After the Bolsheviks seized power, Russia did not find peace easily. A terrible civil war broke out in 1918, lasting until around 1922. The Bolsheviks, known as the Reds, fought against many enemies, called the Whites. The Whites included supporters of the Tsar, army officers, and others who opposed communism. Several foreign countries sent troops to help the Whites, fearing the spread of communism. The civil war was brutal, causing immense suffering. Millions died from fighting, hunger, and disease. The Bolsheviks under Lenin's leadership were ruthless in their fight to stay in power. They used a policy called war communism, taking grain from peasants to feed the army in cities. They also established a secret police, the Cheka, to crush opposition. Leon Trotsky played a key role in organizing the Red Army into an effective fighting force. Despite many challenges, the Red Army eventually defeated the White forces. During the Civil War, the Bolsheviks consolidated their control, banning other political parties and creating a one-party state. In 1922, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR, was formally established. Moscow became the new capital city. The new Soviet government began to transform Russia, nationalizing industries and redistributing land. The government promoted atheism and attacked the Russian Orthodox Church. A new social order was being built, based on communist ideology. The revolution had ended centuries of Tsarist rule and brought a completely new system of government and society to Russia. The world watched, with a mix of fear and fascination as the Soviet Union emerged. The Russian Revolution had a massive impact on Russia itself. It ended the old system of nobles and peasants, aiming to create a classless society. The Soviet government invested heavily in industry and education. However, these changes came at a great cost, with millions suffering under harsh rule. Political freedoms were suppressed for decades. The revolution also changed global politics, with the Soviet Union becoming the world's first communist state. It inspired communist movements and revolutions in other countries. For much of the 20th century, the world was divided by the Cold War. This period of tension and rivalry pitted the communist Soviet Union against the capitalist United States. The ideas of the Russian Revolution, like equality and workers' rights, resonated with many people. However, the reality of Soviet communism was often very different from its ideals. The lack of democracy, suppression of dissent, and economic problems eventually led to the Soviet Union's collapse in 1991. This event marked another major turning point in world history, ending the Cold War era. Even today, the legacy of the Russian Revolution is debated. Some see it as a brave attempt to create a fairer world, while others point to the immense human suffering it caused. In Russia, people have complex feelings about this period, which shaped their country's modern identity. The revolution's impact on governance, society, and international relations continues to be studied and discussed.